Who was the strongest wizard in Middle-earth? The wind whispered over the ancient hills of the Westfold, carrying with it a question that had lingered for centuries. A question that bards, wanderers, and scholars alike had pondered under the light of the moon. Where is the strongest wizard who ever walked the lands of Middle-earth? To answer it, we must go beyond the bounds of mere geography. We must travel deep into the currents of history, across oceans of time, to the very origin of the beings men call wizards. For in truth, they were no ordinary men at all. The coming of the Istari long before the War of the Ring, before the white walls of Minas Tirith shone in defiance against Mordor, 5 figures stepped ashore upon the Grey Havens. They came from the west, beyond the sight of mortal eyes, sent by the Vala, the powers of the world, to guide and guard the free peoples against the growing shadow of Sauron. They were known as the Istari. Their names were whispered in many tongues. Curunr, the White, whom men came to call Saruman. Mithrandir, the Grey Pilgrim, who was Gandalf. Iwendil, the gentle Radagast the Brown. And 2 others, the Blue Wizards, whose deeds were hidden in the distant east, far beyond the reach of most tales. But from the moment they set foot on these shores, there was little doubt among the wise. In sheer power of spirit, Saruman was the greatest of them all, the first and the greatest. At least in power, Saruman's mind was sharp as the cold edge of a blade. He knew the lore of metals and stones, of the voices that could sway the hearts of kings, of the secret fires that burned in the deep. His robes were white, his authority unquestioned, and he was named head of the White Council, the gathering of the wise that included Elrond, Galadriel, Círdan, and Gandalf himself. Yet in the eyes of the Vala, the Istari were not sent to dominate, but to guide. Their power was to be wielded with restraint, never to match the force of Sauron with equal tyranny, but to inspire the peoples of Middle-earth to resist him by their own courage. For Saruman, this was difficult. The subtle poison of pride in the great black tower of Orthanc. Saruman began his long studies of the enemy's arts. He delved into the making of rings, the powers of command, and the whispers of the past. He peered into the Palantir, one of the ancient seeing stones, and thought himself strong enough to master it. But the stone was linked to Barad-dûr, and through it the eye of Sauron gazed back. The corruption came not as a thunderclap, but as a slow fog. Saruman began to believe that the power of the One Ring was not only the key to Sauron's defeat, but to a new order, an order ruled by himself. He no longer spoke of destroying the ring, but of using it. In his heart, he ceased to be a servant of the Vala and became a rival to the Dark Lord. The most powerful wizard had fallen, not in battle, but in his own mind. The Grey Pilgrim who was overlooked in what of Gandalf? He was not the tallest. His robes were not the brightest. He wandered without retinue, slept under the stars, spoke with farmers and innkeepers as often as with kings. To some, he seemed nothing more than a meddlesome old wanderer. But Mithrandir carried a fire within him, a fire that no shadow could smother. He did not command by fear or by force, but by trust. He listened to the small voices of hobbits, the laughter of the Shire, the quiet bravery of ordinary folk. When the time came, that humble strength became the steel of the West. The battle in the dark deep beneath the mines of Moria. Gandalf stood upon the bridge of Khazad-dûm. Behind him, the Fellowship fled. Before him, the ancient terror known as a Balrog roared like a storm from the dawn of the world. You cannot pass. The wizard's voice rang out, echoing against stone. His staff blazed with light. His sword shone silver in the dark. The battle that followed was one of fire and shadow, of lightning in the deep and stone crumbling into the abyss. Both fell. Both were gone from the world above. Yet beyond time and mortal reckoning, Gandalf was sent back, not as the Grey, but as the White, not as a servant among equals, but as the head of his order, with authority now greater than Saruman's, for Saruman had forfeited it through treachery. The White Rider, when Gandalf returned, he was no longer merely the pilgrim in gray. His very presence seemed to fill the air with clarity. Shadows retreated before him. In Rohan, he broke the spell of Saruman over King Theoden. At Helm's Deep, he rode forth at dawn, turning the tide of battle. In the final war, he stood before the Black Gate, defying Sauron himself. It was not only his magic that made him great, but his wisdom, his refusal to take the ring, his faith that even the smallest could change the course of the future be why the wars end. There was no doubt. Gandalf the White was the mightiest wizard remaining in Middle-earth. Where is he now? After Sauron's fall, Gandalf's task was done. He had no wish to rule or to remain as a power among men. His work was to help the Age of Men begin, not to dominate IT.so. When the time came, he went west to the Grey Havens. There, under the fading light of the evening star, a white ship awaited. Upon its deck stood those whose time in Middle-earth had ended: Frodo, Bilbo, Elrond, Galadriel, and Gandalf. The ship slipped silently over the water, bound for Valinor, the Undying Lands. There, beyond the circles of the world, no shadow could touch him. The meaning of his departure, and so, if you ask where the strongest wizard in Middle-earth is now, the answer is, he is gone. He dwells in a realm where the sea is calm and the air is eternal, where the scars of war fade into memory, but his legacy remains. In every hearth where hobbits tell tales, in the banners of kings who once rode to ward his call, in the courage of those who believe that even the smallest hands can shape the fate of the world, there is Gandalf. The strongest wizard is not the one who commands the greatest armies or wields the deadliest spells. The strongest is the one who refuses the power that would corrupt him, who lifts others to stand on their own feet, and who, when his work is done, walks away. Then here is the definitive conclusion, based on Tolkien's works and the full context of the Legendarium. Although Saruman began as the most powerful of the Istari in raw ability, knowledge, and authority, he fell into pride, corruption, and betrayal. Power without moral strength proved hollow, and in the end, he was stripped of his status and destroyed. Gandalf, on the other hand, never sought to be the greatest. Through humility, wisdom, and unwavering loyalty to his mission, he resisted temptation where others failed. After his death and resurrection as Gandalf the White, he was given greater authority than any other wizard in Middle-earth. From that moment until his departure to Valinor, he was undeniably the strongest wizard in Middle-earth, not just in power, but in character. Final verdict. The strongest wizard in Middle-earth was Gandalf the White. His strength was not merely in magic, but in the moral will to use power only in service of others, and never for domination.